Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to day one of the holiday card series for 2016. I'm so excited to get the holiday card series started. This is my 8th year doing the holiday card series. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, it is when I create 25 holiday card videos and I share them here at YouTube and at my blog. It's one of my most favorite times of the year, and judging from the amount of questions I've received in my email inbox, you guys have been eagerly awaiting for it too. So I'm starting out with the Dashing stamp set from the Greeting Farm, and I've prepped a card base here out of some Bristol paper. This is cut to 9 inches wide by 7 inches tall, and then I scored it at 3.5 inches, so that the finished folded card would be 3.5 inches tall by 9 inches wide. I will cut it down eventually, but for now this is the size I'm working with. I then took 3 of the reindeer from that Dashing stamp set and placed them on the card inside my Misty stamping tool. I swing down the door and picked up those stamps, and now I'm going to be inking them up with some Onyx Black VersaFine ink. This is a waterproof ink, and I'm going to eventually be using some Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers on my card. So that's why I'm using both this particular type of ink and this particular cardstock. Bristol paper works wonderfully with the particular type of markers I'm using today, and so that is why I'm using this cardstock. So while I've got my stamps on my stamp press, I went ahead and stamped them a second time onto some masking paper, and I just used some generic black ink. This is just some black ink from Simon Says Stamp for the masking, because in the past when I've used some pigment inks like I did for the rest of the card, when I stamp on masking paper, I'm too impatient. I don't want to wait for it to dry. And then when I cut them out, I get ink on my fingers. So I used a fast drying ink on the masking paper so that I was able to trim those masks out right away and then adhere them down onto my card. These masks are going to protect the reindeer while I do some ink blending. I've also got a strip of masking paper, and I just drew kind of a wonky sloped line and then cut that out. That's going to create the ground. And now I've got some dies from Penny Black. These are some really beautiful snowflake dies. I am obsessed with snowflake dies. I have so many in my stash, and I can't seem to stop buying them. I have 1,000,001 snowflake stamps. In fact, I designed snowflake stamps for Simon Says Stamp. They will be coming out next week. Sneak peek for you, or a little hint for you anyway. So now I've just got a little more cardstock that I put underneath that Post-it tape, just so that if I blend past that Post-it tape edge, it's okay. So I'm starting out with Peacock Feathers Distress ink, and I'm bringing that down from the fold, and I want it to be very faint and light once it touches that kind of snowbank that I've created at the bottom with the masking paper. I don't want it to be super intense down there. In fact, it could almost blend right into white if needed. So now I'm using some chipped sapphire, and this is going to intensify that peacock feathers, and then I'll eventually add some black soot as well. It's interesting, I don't think I've ever done ink blending on top of Bristol paper before, and it takes Distress ink a little bit differently than something I use more often like Neenah Solar White. It almost has more of a faded look. It doesn't want to absorb the color right away, so it was really hard to get some intense colors, or not hard, but just it took a little more time than I was used to. So now I'm peeling off all of my masking, including that Post-it tape, and I'll peel off those snowflakes one at a time as well. When I was peeling off the snowflakes, they started to look a little bit too stark white to me, and I thought they might be really distracting. So I actually decided to go ahead and blend on a little bit more of that Peacock Feathers Distress ink, just to soften those snowflakes and help them blend in a little bit more. By no means are they going to be hidden or very subtle. They're still going to be very bright, but I thought it would be best to blend on a little bit of that color over those snowflakes. And I did put another strip of Post-it tape down to protect the back of my card for that. So now I'm going to go ahead and take those masks off these reindeer, and Every time I remove masks, I've said this in the past, it's like Christmas Day. You just don't even realize how awesome your design is until you peel off those masks and you see the white area underneath. I think it's one of the most fun parts of paper crafting because you can't really tell what you're doing until at that point. So now I'm going to do some coloring with some Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. And I used two different colors on the reindeer. I used oatmeal and I also used brown. And the brown was a little bit too reddish, so the oatmeal kind of toned that down. And then the oatmeal was a little too green and the brown kind of warmed it up a little bit. So these two colors together worked really well to get a nice color for the deer. I think actually deer are a little more brown than this. They're not quite as red, but it still worked out phenomenally. So I'm just painting that on, and I'm using a paper towel to pick up any of the areas that start to look a little bit too dark. I also used wine red for the red color on the Santa hat and also on the sweater. And then I used dark brown to intensify and shade all of those red areas. For the cheeks on all of the reindeer, I used a little bit of light carmine, and that's just going to give a little bit of a rosiness to their cheeks. And then for that scarf in the center, I started out with olive green and kind of put that color in, and then I brought in some of the color green, and that just, it's a little bit more of a blue toned green, so it intensifies it and it looks really nice. So now I'm using some light gray to put a little bit of shading on the white areas. And I'm also using that color underneath the reindeer for a shadow. In fact, I don't think this is light gray. I think this is actually warm gray. I'm not entirely sure on the color. But all of the colors I've used for my coloring today are included in the 48 pack of Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. So I wanted to add some really cutesy details to these reindeer, so I took a white Jelly Roll pen and added some little sort of freckle dots on the cheeks and also some spots on their backs. So I'm going to be heat embossing my sentiment today. So I'm testing the area to see if it's completely dry. It's not quite dry. So I'm going to hit with my heat tool just to speed up the drying process. And then I'll go ahead and test it one more time, and it looks like it's much better this time around. So now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. This sentiment stamp is actually from a stamp set from Do Crafts, and I'll have that linked down in the supply section below. I always have all of my supplies linked in the video description and also in the supplies over at my blog. So if you ever have a question about any supplies that I use on cards, you can check those out, and there are even links to online stores. So I stamped that in Versamark ink, and now I'm sprinkling on some Hero Arts white embossing powder. This is a really great white embossing powder. It's fantastic for sentiments that need to be crisp and sharp. And I realized that some of that white of the white type or text still wasn't coming through quite as much as I wanted. So I took a light gray, and this color really is light gray, and I added a little shadow underneath and to the side of each of these letters just to emphasize that greeting a little bit. So I trimmed off the card, so it's actually 7 inches wide by 3.5 tall. This should fit inside of a standard 5x7 envelope. And then I took some clear Wink of Stella glitter brush pen and added that to the green and red areas on the reindeer. So that finishes the card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed day 1 of the holiday card series. I can't wait to show you all of the fun, amazing holiday card ideas I have in store for you. Please stay tuned. I'm going to try to keep to a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule for all of these holiday cards. So I hope you will join me throughout this entire process. Thanks for watching today, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.